I had summarised the purpose of the report as being to bring nuanced understanding of religion into closer dialogue with discussion of security and local, national and international community. You'll notice that on the slide, these three concepts, religion, security and community, are all in inverted commas. And before I talk, though, about our conclusions and recommendations and unpick these a bit, I'd like first to show you a short film. There have been two elements to the project, as well as the leadership element which has generated this Religion, Security and Global Uncertainties report, which we are promoting at this and at other public events. We've been doing more detailed research around the theme of martyrdom in its various and contested meanings over the last century. But it's the leadership strand of the project which we're emphasising today. There are 10 key conclusions and recommendations in the report. I'm going to highlight 5 of them in this presentation. Our conclusion 1, religious literacy and a wider vocabulary are needed by all. Precisely because mainstream Western society is predominantly secular, a positive effort needs to be made to enable those who do not have a religious faith to have a better understanding both of the significant minorities in the West itself who have a religious commitment, and of the continuing and arguably growing influence of religion in much of the rest of the world. While popular and media attention does tend to focus on Islamic resurgence, it's important to emphasise that Christianity too has seen substantial growth on a global scale in recent decades. Moreover, in a religiously diverse, globalised world, there is also a pressing need for religious people themselves to understand other traditions, and indeed to understand varieties of secularity and non-belief. In the long run, we should be looking to schools to address this issue. But if better understanding is to be fostered among the adult population, the media has a crucial role to play. While it may sometimes be hard to resist the temptation to go for the eye-catching headline that stereotypes a particular religious group, there needs to be a greater readiness to look beneath the surface and to seek to educate readers, listeners and viewers. I think religious groups themselves also need to take responsibility for public education and perhaps see a different kind of role from what has sometimes been to propagate their religion among more missionary faiths or to minister to their own communities, but to be more open to a public that may not want to be converted but is prepared to be better informed. All this matters because a negative dynamic in which religious people are feared because they are not understood and themselves feel threatened and embattled by an uncomprehending society is a climate in which insecurity and consequent extremist ideas and actions can fester. It's also a climate in which even people of goodwill, with the best of intentions, are liable to misunderstand each other because of divergent underlying assumptions. We also, in this report, want to argue for a broad understanding of the term security. Security professionals are understandably preoccupied with identifying and combating immediate threats. But measures that, however inadvertently alienate whole communities, risk being counterproductive in the long term, thus fostering insecurity. In particular, for those whose sense of personal security and identity is rooted in a strong religious commitment, a sense that that religious identity is being challenged can lead to a destabilising sense of insecurity. Our second conclusion: religion plays an ambivalent role when it comes to threatening or promoting security. Hence, it's crucial to understand the specific context. And a few examples of this. Firstly, the hardline evangelical Protestantism, promoted by the late Ian Paisley for much of his life, was undeniably a factor in prolonging the conflict in Northern Ireland. But that same religious tradition has also generated significant resources for reconciliation, especially through the work of the evangelical contribution on Northern Ireland. In the Middle East, the political and military activities of Islamist movements, such as Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood, need to be seen alongside their grassroots activities in social welfare, often improving conditions in local communities. Another example, popular religious movements in Africa sometimes appear to threaten the security of failing or weak states. But they may in fact well have gathered momentum precisely because of the insecurity people feel due to the limitations of the state. It's also important to understand the specific teachings of various religious traditions and the differences between them. Our underlying point would be that we should not label any religious tradition or sub-tradition as inherently threatening or conversely stabilizing, but rather seek carefully to understand it in the context of a particular situation in question. Thirdly, there's no simple cause and effect perspective whereby supposedly dangerous ideas lead people to violent action. It does not follow that a Muslim who believes that it is theoretically permissible to kill infidels, or a fundamentalist Christian who believes that abortionists are mass murderers who therefore deserve to be executed themselves, will ever actually act on those convictions. Conversely, there are indications that sometimes people with previously quite moderate beliefs can be quite abruptly radicalized, perhaps really for more social, political, or psychological reasons than for religious ones. Moreover, the attempt to contain ideas regarded as dangerous can risk becoming a counterproductive and polarizing provocation. I do have particular reservations about the December 2013 report of the Prime Minister's Task Force on Tackling Extremism in the UK, insofar that it seems to set up a clear polarity between what it regards as a peaceful traditional Islam and what it calls Islamist extremism. It needs to be recognised that there are many shades of grey in between. And I think unless that's fully appreciated, there's a risk of finding extremists in every mosque, alienating majority Muslim opinion, and making it much harder to identify the relatively small minority who are an actual risk to national security. A further factor that is apparent from some of our recent work is the outrage of many Muslims at Western interventions in the Islamic world, which are seldom justified or explained in ways that they can accept. And in this respect, I think there is a need to apply elsewhere some of the lessons hard learned in Northern Ireland in the 1970s and 1980s about the dangers of antagonising whole communities, so that even though they do not actively participate in terrorism, they are prepared passively to sympathise with it. Conclusion 7 on the report: religious leaders are potentially effective agents for overcoming community tensions. Nevertheless, project participants had the impression both that they are an underutilised resource and that when and where they do take positive initiatives, these tend to be underreported. Our point is that despite the risks and obstacles, such relationships are worth exploring, and when they work well, can pay considerable dividends. To apply a Northern Ireland parallel again, one thinks of the crucial contribution of Harold Good and Alec Reid to the peace process when they witnessed the decommissioning of IRA weapons in 2005. Also in 2005 in Bradford, effective collaboration between religious leaders and other key community figures helped to avert any local unrest following the 7/7 attacks in London. But if successes of this kind are to become more widespread, we come back to the need for a more informed understanding of religion in secular government at both local and national level. Without such knowledge, there is a danger of choosing collaboratives who are not sufficiently representative of the communities they purport to lead, and thereby increasing rather than reducing fragmentation and alienation. And in relation to the media, there is a need to be more prepared to report positive stories of reconciliation and cross-community collaboration. The final conclusion I want to comment on particularly, conclusion 8. Academics and policymakers need to develop long-term strategic partnerships informed by proper knowledge of their respective capabilities and requirements. The starting point for this project was a sense that academics' insights in this field were being very imperfectly communicated and implemented. I now understand perhaps better than I did when I planned this work 3 years ago that we are in fact operating in different cultures and with different sets of imperatives. But one possible model is indicated by the History and Policy Organisation, which posts short papers by academics on its website and runs regular seminars. If a network could be established through some kind of pattern of regular activity, it would then provide contacts and resources that could be drawn upon quickly when the need arises. So I conclude by saying that I'm conscious that this report and presentation do not provide any easy or instant answers for those seeking to combat radicalisation and terrorism. They are, however, offered as a basis for longer-term strategic thinking and action about processes for reducing such challenges in the future. The report also points to ways of reducing religious and cultural tension and misunderstanding here in Britain, and to fostering attitudes in the predominantly secular West that will make it more at ease with a majority world in which religion remains a potent force. Thank you very much for your attention.